So you signed with the Expos. Did you know your first assignment is Jamestown, New York?
My brother had pitched here.
Oh, is that right?
Not for Jamestown, but for Erie Cardinals,
yeah.
2 years prior. So my family had already been to the stadium because Lauren White, another former Illinois State Redbird, was playing for Jamestown at the time, but they'd already seen a game here. So when we get into town, we go into those dormitories across the street, and Bret is not with us. But Bret is going to be my roommate for that particular day, and then we got to kind of disperse and find our own places, and obviously we end up staying there. But Bret gets in there late at night, and I've never met Bret. I wouldn't know what he looked like. Obviously I'd never met the guy. So I'm sleeping, and I am a notorious sleepwalker. And here comes Bret, because they got beat or got eliminated from the NCAA tournament. He flies in, they bring him down, he comes into my dorm room type dealie. And in the middle of the night, I jump out of my bed and I'm yelling, "Fire, fire!" And Bret gets up and runs out of the room. I shut the door and I go back to sleep. That was my first introduction to Bret Davis. We still laugh about that. But
gosh. Or Roger LaFrancois, what was he like as a manager?
Roger was very similar to George McFly in Back to the Future.
Oh, really?
Roger did not want confrontation. I mean, he just wanted everything, because Roger was such a nice human being. He just wanted everything to stay on one level, even keel, and no rocky roads. No, he was very nervous about everything going as planned. It's ironic. The only game I lost that year, Kevin had to go back to a wedding to California, and Roger was coaching third base, and he ended up holding a runner-up that would have tied the game. That would have given me the perfect season.
Danny Freed had a hell of a year that year.
Yes, I remember. He was our go-to guy. I mean, again, and even when I remember every fifth day he was on the mound, and he was, what made him successful is just his ability to throw strikes. I remember he could get that breaking ball over any time for strikes, and he was our go-to guy, even and carried us right into the playoffs and against Oneonta. Yes.
In fact, Danny Leone and Danny Freed combined for a 23-4 record. Leone, let's see, was a 1.16 ERA. Freed had a remarkable 0.67 ERA, just 9 earned runs and 121 innings.
That made me look pretty good as a manager, right? Pretty good when you have those kind of ERAs and those numbers. I was very fortunate that year. Just my first year of pro ball. I said, hey, this stuff's pretty easy. This ain't too hard here. But again, talented players, good organization, and that made it all possible.
Darrin Winston. Obviously, I played a few years with Darrin, but Darrin shows up. His wife. He's already married. They already have a baby and another one on the way. The one bad thing about Darrin was he had the Nintendo baseball. And I remember sitting in those dorm rooms, and Rod and I were probably two of the most educated guys on the team. We sat there with our first introduction to Nintendo, and we sat there and ate pizza and drank bottles of Coke all night long playing this video game when it first came out. And it was Darrin's game at the time. Danny Leone was a very good ball player. Obviously, he pitched in the big leagues, and I believe he was from Venezuela. That wasn't very educated, but boy, he could really wing the ball. He was from Venezuela, but I remember, and our communication was difficult because I didn't know Spanish and he didn't know a lick of English. But he, through talking to him, they had dirt floors, they had no plumbing. I mean, there's certain things that we take for granted. I mean, just out of the blue, they did not have those, in 1988, which seemed, a little bit ridiculous to me. But, in that day and age, to not have running water and the simple things in life is interesting. Martin Robitaille, the most interesting story about Martin was he was a Canadian citizen and he didn't have his papers in order. And we were going back across the Canadian line because Hamilton and St. Catharines was in the league at the time, and he didn't have his papers in order, and he had to be left behind because he was hiding in the bathroom trying to get across the border because he knew his papers weren't in order. And boy, we didn't see Martin for a week. Wifredo Nieva. Oh, I know him as Wifredo Cordero. I don't know where the Nieve come from, but you know, he was supposedly only 16 years old at the time. He was a fantastic player. You could see it right from the start. He had size. He was pretty smooth, even as a 16-year-old. Very quiet kid, but you know, he had strength even as a young kid. Of course, Marquis was our center fielder that year, and you know, it's a very spacious center field out there in the ballpark. So, what a great guy to have roaming the outfield for you. And remember, you know, the media had voted me most likely to make the major leagues that particular year, and even when I saw Marquis, you know, he made the major leagues and played there for many years, and I always brought that up to him whenever I saw him when I was traveling. And that is it. That it really brings back a lot of memories looking at these cards.
You had an incredible 0.67 ERA, just 9 earned runs and 121 innings pitched. Wow. What I mean, did you sense that things just could not go wrong that year? Well,
you know, nowadays, for a kid to even pitch 121 innings in a short season is not going to happen. Right. You know, I never had explosive, dynamic stuff, and obviously, you know, that's what you need for the major leagues. But you know, I knew how to pitch, and a lot of these kids didn't know how to hit. And so, you know, when you get a smart pitcher and a not so smart hitter, that smart pitcher is usually going to win out. You know, I made a couple of starts, and one of them was against the Erie team. I believe they were the Orioles at the time, and I can't remember the manager's name. I want to think it was Bobby Tolan, but don't hold me to that. But I remember he was quoted in the paper as saying, yeah, he's a nice pitcher, but you know, he's not major league material. And it was always nice looking back when I beat Erie the last game of the season to knock them out of the playoffs, and for us to get into there.
Well, talk about that game, because that's been written up quite extensively. You were hurt.
I had a cracked rib, as it turns out, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the stress of pitching so many innings in college and then coming here and pitching so many innings, or what it was, but I had a stress fracture in the back of my rib, and you know, as I was extending, it was like a sharp pain in my back, and but I mean, I had never had any injury problems, and I figured I could fight through it, and I ended up fighting through it, and but they ended up not letting me start in the playoffs. Of course, you know, they started right away, so I wouldn't be able to. I pitched 10 innings in that last game anyway, so I wouldn't be able to start in the playoffs anyway. But when I went back home, you know, the pain was still there, so I had it X-rayed, and ended up I had a stress fracture in my rib.
Made their final out on a close play at the plate.
Yeah.
The Expos won the game 2-1 and clinched the 88 division title.
Well, I had 3 or 4 more successful minor league seasons, and to be flat honest, I was in AA, doing very well, and I had a pitching coach that wanted to change things. Mm-hmm. When I went out to start a game, I usually finished it or came close to finishing it, and my pitching coach that year had some throwing program, and I could give you the date if I saw a calendar, but you know, I was about 10-3 at the time with about a 2.5 ERA, and this guy wants to start this throwing program. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, about 4 weeks later, I've got a torn labrum. That was probably the setback that probably cost me, you know, pitching the big leagues. Even though my stuff was a little bit soft, you know, the chances of me pitching up there were still better than average. But then after the injury, obviously injury derails a lot of major league hopes.
Mm-hmm. It's been great that it's worked out well that we had a chance to chat, and I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.